Yeah, I mean, again, Cam's in the middle of his rehab program. He's doing the things that we're asking of him. And we'll go ahead and start Kyle.
What's the best way to move forward after the San Francisco game?
Exactly that, just move forward. I mean, we're going to learn from what happened. Again, you break the tape down, you look at some of the things that happened, defensively, looking at the things that we did. We were probably very poor in our gap discipline, very poor with our eye discipline in terms of looking at things. They do a lot of things to get you to look at the wrong thing, and we did, quite honestly, instead of looking at things that we're supposed to. And that led to some of our problems, some of our issues. We ended up playing behind the ball. And by that I mean we've got to be able to get to our creases, and if our creases are in front of the ball, we force the ball to stay in between. But when you get behind and you see an opportunity to go and try and make a play and you don't, you get yourself in trouble. And quite honestly, that's what happened. And as I said too, there's some things I probably needed to do as a coach to say, hey, look, let's try this, let's do this. We did a couple of those things and they worked, but then they countered them. And then it goes back to us making plays or not making plays. This game came down to about 5 plays on our defense that, we typically have handled. And, you can survive 1 or 2, but you can't survive, 4 or 5 explosive plays.
What did you see after watching film on Kyle? I know it's not all his fault, but what did you see that he needs to get better at?
Well, probably the biggest thing is he's got to be patient. And listening to Norv and Scotty and talking to them about what happened, what was happening during the game, and then after they've had a chance to break it down and look at it, is that Kyle sped some things up when he didn't need to. He had a little bit more time. He probably anticipated a little too much. He needed at times to take what they gave him. Probably one of the disappointments is that we ran the ball effectively, and if we do some other things on the offense, we give ourselves an opportunity to try and run the ball more. Christian was having a good day doing those things, but unfortunately we didn't. And as a whole, we've got to give ourselves a chance, especially against a very good team like that.
Ron, you guys gave Jordan Scarlett a couple of carries later in the game yesterday. Did you ever have any thought about putting Will in for a few snaps at quarterback, trying to get him to
Well, no, to be honest, because again, we're playing with a young quarterback to begin with, and he needs reps. He needs to practice and learn and grow and understand. And we've got some young guys that are playing a lot of football right now, and those guys have got to get as many reps as they can. Dennis Daly's our best option at left tackle. He needs to work. He needs to work at it. He needs to practice and continue to grow as a football player. Brian Burns is another young man that we're playing and counting on. Marquise Haynes. I mean, we got some young guys that are in key positions that have to continue to grow as football players in order for us to be successful. And, when there's a chance to play those guys, we will.
You mentioned Dennis being your best option at left tackle. Is Greg still in the concussion protocol? Is he still in the process of getting back?
Yes, he is, and he's, we'll see how things are going. I don't have to give you guys an update till Wednesday, which I will, but right now he's still in the protocol.
With Greg, is that potentially a season ender?
No, what it is though is it's probably, just as a result is that he had one during the summer. And the last time we had a player that had that, it was probably 5 to 6 weeks before he was cleared. So again, and I don't want to set any timetable because I have no idea, but I'm just telling you from past experience, that's where we are.
You were talking, I guess, Friday on the call about some guys that have stepped up as leaders. And one of the guys you mentioned was Bruce Irvin.
Absolutely.
What some of the things you've seen? It seemed like he did that a little bit yesterday.
He did that yesterday, and that was outstanding. And again, it's one of the things that these young guys that I mentioned, the Marquise Haynes, the Brian Burns, the Christian Millers, have to learn and understand in terms of being a pro. Things aren't always going to go well, but all you can do is your part and do your job. And at one point, we got a little bit of life because we got it down to 2 touchdowns. We got the sack, and then we got the punt as the kickoff after the safety, and then we got a chance and we scored a touchdown. Next thing you know, we're within 2 touchdowns. We put ourselves back into play, and that's where you want to be able to feed off of somebody else's energy. Unfortunately, we gave up a couple of big plays and they scored again. So. A guy like that who's leading by example is really what you want. I mean, I thought that was outstanding. And I will say this, if you look at how Vernon Butler played yesterday, he fed off of that as a direct result. So, we're getting, the unintended leadership just from his ability to go out there and, play hard all the time no matter what.
In years past, with guys like Darryl and Taylor, you've sort of brought them along, used them as that jumbo tackle in their first year, let them learn. What about Dennis has allowed him to come in and immediately play and have an impact?
Well, I think a big part of it is just, again, he had a really good rookie camp, mini camp, OTAs, training camp. He played several positions during those periods. And again, when you're learning what the right guard does with the right tackle, or the left guard does with the left tackle, that's important. I mean, you learn to understand those things. Now, he made several mistakes yesterday, but he did play well at times, and he showed, why we have so much faith in him. The hardest part for him was he missed a couple days of practice, and he's a young guy, so he's got to practice. He's got to be on the field learning and growing.
Talk a little bit about Dennis Daly. One of the things that you liked in his college tape was the highs that he had. When he was good, he was
Yes.
really good. But he hasn't quite hit the point where he's consistently.
Right.
How does that come about? Is that just reps?
Work. And most of the guys that have been around have heard me say it takes at least 5,000 reps for things to become second nature. And probably to date, he's probably not even close to that number. But he'll get it. He's a good young man who works hard. He's smart. He understands the game. But he does have a lot to learn.
With that tackle spot, the Darrell and Taylor, was that going to be a rotation? And then it kind of maybe it got.
No, we're going to work it just kind of the way we did. We knew that at some point we were probably going to have to put Darrell inside and have him play right guard. So again, you just have to be ready for it, and that's what we did. We had, Darrell was going to have to play right guard, and Taylor was going to go back to right tackle. So we kind of planned and thought about those things going into the game.
Ron, you mentioned young player. Go ahead.
I think Olsen said in the locker room yesterday that you had to be real careful this doesn't turn into a
Absolutely.
landslide, a Pittsburgh scenario.
Absolutely.
So can you address that a little bit?
Well, I think the biggest thing, more so than everything else, is that there's going to be comparisons to what happened last year to what potential could happen this year, and the key word there is potential. I believe, with some of the leadership we have, and after having gone and experienced it, I think the guys understand what it's going to take. The thing that we have to remember too, though, was from that point on, we were losing games by a score or less. It's not like we were getting blown out. So we were a play away in each one of those games, that we could have won. I mean, right up to the point where we played Atlanta, which was, was the only other game that got away from us last season. So I think we have enough experience in that locker room to prevent it. We as coaches have experienced it, and as I said to the guys too, is if this is my 34th year in the NFL. If you're in the league long enough, you're going to experience these things. It's going to happen. That's just the way it is. How you handle it, that's what defines you this year. So I think we have enough guys that have been through it. And as Greg said, talking about it's not going to get it done. Doing something about it will. So it'll be up to us.
Yeah, Ron, to that point, Luke said after the game, you don't just speak it into existence,
Right.
in response. But what do you need to see from the team this week, and do you feel that what happened last year will serve as a learning experience that they can use?
I
this
like to
season?
believe it does, and I think the biggest thing you have to do, Max, is go out and you got to work at it. You got to prepare for it, and again, you've got to first of all learn from this week, and then put it behind you and go forward. And that's probably the most important thing, is going forward, focusing on the next opponent, and taking it one at a time.
Brian Burns, obviously, and you addressed this a bit yesterday. His drop in playing time, was that all wrist related, or was
Yes.
some of it scheme related?
I think it's all risk related. He fits into what we do. He fits very well into what we do. But with the wrist, what it's been since the Texans game has been tough on him. It's hard to use it. We have it clubbed up so he can't grab and pull with it like he has. And we'll see how it goes. But hopefully, it'll start to heal up and he'll be more and more comfortable with it, and trying to understand how to use it when it's clubbed up like that.
How's Bruce helped him?
I think in just getting him to understand what it takes to play. When you watch some of the things that happen, like when we'll talk about something, we'll say, hey, you've got this, on the outside. And Bruce will say, hey, look, when that happens, this is how you want to do it. This is how you want to set the edge. That's what you see Bruce do. And you see Mario do the same thing. And I also think Bruce has helped Mario because Bruce has been in the system before. When he was in Seattle and with Oakland, these are the things that we do that are similar to what he's done before. So he's helped everybody on that outside linebacking group.
Have you noticed, I don't know how much you knew of him back then when he first came in the league and everybody was talking about his past and how he drove on that, how he's different now?
Bruce was part of that cluster of players coming out when we drafted Luke. And so we knew Bruce's history. Marty knew it really well. So when the opportunity, we tried to get Bruce last year. I don't know if you guys knew that, but when he was let go by the Raiders, we tried to sign him. He ended up going to Atlanta because that's where he's from. But just looking at it, thinking, And then when we made the transition, we talked about veteran guys that would fit us, and Bruce's name was one of the first ones that come up. So we knew that he had that kind of ability.
You've been very complimentary of Ross Cockrell all season. At corner, at this point, do you just feel like you've got three
We do. We feel
guys?
like we have three guys that can contribute at corner. I mean, right now JB's playing as well as anybody in this league. I think he does some really good things. He's very consistent. Dante getting him back yesterday, he made some mistakes. He's got to be a little more disciplined, a little more tight with his coverage techniques. And his eyes. He's got to keep his eyes where they're supposed to be. And then Ross is pretty much the Swiss Army knife. I mean, he plays outside and plays inside for us. And he's a guy that will continue in that role. He's done some really nice things, and we're really pleased to have him out there.
Ron, I think the knee-jerk reaction yesterday among maybe some fans and observers was Kyle has a bad game. Thrust Cam back in there, but is this more to what you said a couple weeks ago about not
Right,
pressuring?
because again, we got to make sure he's ready. And the last update I got more than anything else is he's going through his rehab, and as he continues through that, they'll give me updates as to where he is. And we'll see. Again, he's probably had a workout today or some sort of treatment. He'll have one tomorrow. He'll have one on Wednesday, and we'll probably get an update by then. But right now, as I told you guys, we're going to this game with Kyle as the starter.
It looked like he had an earpiece on the sideline.
Yes.
What kind of impact is he having on the sideline?
Well, he's listening and he's talking about what's going on out there. He was real close to Will the whole game, and I could see he and Will interacting on things that happened. And a couple of times I looked over when something bad happened. I could see the grimace on his face and him explaining it to Will a couple of times. So, again, he's around. He's doing the things that we've asked of him. He's been tremendous.
I think we've all gotten a little spoiled watching Luke stop so many running plays over the years, but what did San Francisco do to, I know he had the interception, but to nullify some of his impact?
I don't know if they nullified him as much, Scott, as they found the creases that we allowed. And a big part of it was, again, as I said, we played behind the ball. And to me, that's very disappointing because, again, it's going to be hard against a wide zone team. The front's going to stretch, and you've got to be able to work to your crease. And when that crease gets long, it gets outside, you've got to bust your hump to get out there. And if you don't, the easy way out is to jump behind the play. And if you jump behind a play, you better make it, because if you don't, there's nobody in that gap. So we're a gap accountable defense. Every gap is supposed to have an individual in it, and if there's not a guy in that gap and they hit that crease, then you know who's accountable for it. Yesterday, as I've said before, this was not an issue of one guy. If it was one guy, we'd have taken that one guy out and put everybody else in that needed to be in. It happened to several different players, and that's the disappointment. Because again, in football, I think, is the ultimate team sport. 11 guys doing what they're supposed to give you a chance to succeed. If not, they'll find the one spot. And yesterday they found it 5 times, and we paid the price because of it. So I don't think it was about nullifying Luke, because he was very productive. I mean, he had a solid day as a middle linebacker. He had the kind of day that we expect from him. Just unfortunately, we ended up on the wrong side of it.
Ron, you mentioned that obviously Kyle had a more difficult day yesterday than he had in the past. Did you get a sense that as the game went on and as he took some of those hits, that started to speed up his internal clock as well?
No, I think his internal clock was going fast to begin with. I think the thing that happened with him is he tried to do more than he needed to. Okay, he got out of his comfort level. We saw how very cool and calm he'd been for the most part. We saw him taking the opportunities that he had in front of him. We saw more throws downfield than we had, in the last 4 weeks, I think, from my perspective. He's a guy that stays within his own abilities. He can help us a lot. We saw a little bit of that during training camp when he got out of it and tried to force things. But then when he got his opportunity against Arizona, in the next few weeks, what did we see? We saw the very meticulous, very precise thrower. We saw him taking, what was given to him. And the thing he's got to understand is, you get that ball in Christian's hands or Greg Olson's or Curtis or DJ, Jarius, you put the ball in their hands, they're going to make something happen for you. You don't have to do it all yourself, and that's probably the biggest thing I think that Kyle learned from this is that, hey, let's take what they give us and we'll see what happens.
Ron, I know you talked about creases and where things were missed on defense and that sort of thing. Is this good tape for a coach, or is this to go back and look at with the guys of that game? I mean, because I know it's not going to be fun watching it again, but
Yeah.
as far as the teaching aspect of it and the improvements.
Well, it's funny because that's one of the things that we all said is, hey, this is good teaching tape. The unfortunate part is it's a bunch of negative plays, but we will learn from it. And that's one of the things that we told the players, that we have to be honest with ourselves and we got to learn from it. And when you look at it, there's a couple of plays. I talked about the Scott's point. I talked about, we played behind the ball, and you can't do that and expect to stop a good outside zone team like that. And then we talked about dirty eyes. Well, there's a couple of routes where we watch them, we don't have our eyes focused where they're supposed to be, and a guy runs a dig route on us and catches one for 8 yards. If I got my eyes on my guy and he breaks out, I got a chance to intercept the ball like Luke does. And so that's really good teaching tape, because you'll see the example of what happens when you focus in on your guy, get into position, look back and make the interception, as opposed to I'm running downfield, I'm looking at the quarterback and the guy breaks and I don't see him. So this will be good teaching tape, most certainly. But unfortunately, it's on the wrong circumstances.
Ron, and talking with Marty in the front office, do you get any sense that there could be movement at the deadline?
We'll see. We have a spot, and that's probably the really, interesting thing we have right now. And, we'll see what happens in the next few days.
You think you guys kept that open just for that potential?
Marty's got a plan, and, we'll go through it.
A lot of talk about the guys on the outside, the tackles, Dennis Daly, Taylor Bowden. The guys on the inside, Matt Paradis, we don't really talk about him very much.
That's
what have you
good.
seen from him? Yeah.
I think Matt's done a nice job. I think he's really getting into and learning and understanding the way we protect, the way we direct our protection and our blocking schemes. I think he's really come a long way. I tell you, one guy that's played very well, and you guys haven't talked about it at all, which is really good too, is Greg Van Roten. He played well yesterday. If you can say anybody played well, he played well. Here's a guy who played physical, did a nice job on his pulls, did a nice job helping his left tackle on the inside, protecting the inside. He worked well with the center. There are some guys that aren't getting a lot of recognition, and typically it's the offensive lineman, and that's a good thing. But Matt has done a nice job, and has really come a long way in terms of understanding what we do and how we do it. It was good to have Trey in there. He did get the holding penalty, unfortunately, on that big run. But that's going to happen. I mean, he really only had one practice in the last 5 weeks in pads. But he played a physical game and gave us everything he could out there. So, we're getting back into the swing of things. It's kind of funny to say that after coming off of a bye week, but when you're dealing with the injuries that we've dealt with, unfortunately, we didn't play the way we had expected, or at least hoped to.
This might be more of like a vague general question, but what about a guy makes him a good teacher to younger teammates? Because you mentioned that so often about guys teaching.
Experience. Guys that have experience and quality experience, guys that have done it and have done it at a high level, players tend to look at and listen to. It's interesting because that was one of the things trying to get Luke to understand, that, hey, you've earned the right. And so he's done that. He's opened up and spoke the way he has. A guy like Bruce Irvin, who's been on a Super Bowl winner, who's had success, who's done things the right way, guys listen to. That's important. Having Jarius Wright come in last year, having been in Norv's system, has been able to help, DJ and Curtis. Those guys listen to him. They follow his example. Those are the guys that you really appreciate, because, guys will gravitate to them. Those guys can point them in the right direction. They can give them, the right kind of advice. I was fortunate enough to have played, and I told guys, it doesn't make me a better coach or anything, it just gives me experience, a perspective that I can share with players. Well, that's what guys that have played and had success can do as well. All right? Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, boy.